My parents stopped me from dating after my sister's abusive ex, but they don't know I'm marrying someone tomorrow. My parents set exactly one rule after what happened to my sister, Violet. I'm getting married tomorrow. My parents don't know. In fact, they banned me from dating years ago, convinced I'd suffer the same fate as my sister. And now, I'm about to completely shatter their world. It all started after what happened to my sister, Sophia. My parents laid down exactly one rule: no dating, no relationships, no romantic involvement of any kind until I turned 25. If I broke it, they'd cut off all financial support, and I'd be on my own. This wasn't about being controlling, it was raw, primal fear. They'd watched Sophia's boyfriend, Brendan, systematically harm her over 3 years, isolating her, making her feel worthless, and ultimately, the incident that led to her hospitalization with a serious injury when she tried to leave. Sophia was 22 when it began, the same age I am right now. My parents couldn't protect her because they missed the signs until it was too late. So, they decided to protect me by eliminating any possibility. No dating, no chance of choosing wrong. Simple, traumatized math. The problem was, I'd already met Noah 6 months before that rule came down. We were lab partners in organic chemistry. He had this incredible way of explaining complex molecules, like he was telling stories about tiny characters on adventures. He made me laugh during the most stressful semester of my pre-med track. Somewhere between bonding over failed titrations and celebrating our first successful synthesis, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love. When my parents announced the new rule, 3 weeks after Sophia got out of the hospital, Noah and I had already been secretly together for 2 months. That night, I went to his apartment and just cried. I was convinced we had to break up. I couldn't survive medical school without my parents' help. But Noah held me. He said we'd figure it out, that 3 years wasn't forever, and he'd wait as long as it took. We became experts at hiding in plain sight. Noah was my study partner, my tutoring buddy, the friend who lived near campus so I could stay late without my parents worrying. We'd study at coffee shops, textbooks open between us, holding hands under the table where no one could see. Our anniversaries were celebrated quietly in his apartment with takeout and soft music, always making sure I left early enough to keep my story straight. My roommate, Ava, knew everything and was my constant alibi, texting my parents updates about our girls' nights while I was actually curled up on Noah's couch, critiquing medical dramas. For 2 years, we lived in this delicate balance of secret relationship and public friendship. It worked because my parents were so absorbed in Sophia's recovery they didn't look too closely at my life. Sophia, though? She knew. About 8 months in, she visited me at school and saw the way Noah and I looked at each other at the campus center. She pulled me aside and asked, point blank. I couldn't lie. I braced for anger, for her to tell our parents. Instead, she hugged me. She said she was glad I'd found someone who made me smile like that. She made me promise to be careful, to actually listen if anyone pointed out red flags, because she hadn't, and it nearly cost her her life. I promised. She became our secret keeper, the only family member who knew the truth. She'd cover for me, text warnings if our parents got too nosy. She told me watching Noah and me gave her hope that healthy love existed, that not every relationship ended in physical harm and restraining orders. Everything changed 6 months ago when Noah proposed. We were hiking to a waterfall he'd promised to show me for months. At the top, he got down on one knee with a ring he'd been saving for since our first anniversary. He knew we couldn't tell anyone, couldn't actually get married until my parents' arbitrary timeline expired. But he wanted me to know he was committed, that he'd wait. I said yes, crying so hard I could barely see the simple silver band with its tiny sapphire, chosen because he knew I'd need to hide it. I wore it on a chain under my shirt. In private, we started calling each other fiancé. Publicly, we maintained the study buddy fiction. We told ourselves we'd make it official when I turned 25, in 3 years, a small ceremony, finally free. Then Sophia got sick. Headaches that wouldn't go away. Weeks of tests. They found a brain tumor, the size of a golf ball, pressing against her frontal lobe. The neurosurgeon said it was likely benign, but needed to come out immediately. The surgery was scheduled for 8 weeks out. My parents completely fell apart. They had just gotten Sophia back after losing her to Brendan's control, and now they might lose her permanently to something growing inside her skull. I spent every evening at the hospital with them during Sophia's pre-surgery appointments. One night, after a particularly hard consultation, Sophia pulled me into the hallway. She told me she'd updated her will, just in case. One of her wishes? If something happened during surgery, she wanted me to stop hiding and actually live my life. She wanted me to marry Noah and be happy, not wait for some arbitrary deadline our traumatized parents had invented. I told her nothing was going to happen. The surgeon said the success rate was 97%. But she gripped my hand, hard, and made me promise anyway. She said she'd spent 3 years trapped with someone who made her miserable. She wouldn't let me waste 3 more years hiding someone who made me happy. I promised, even though the thought of her not being okay made me feel sick. The surgery was a Monday morning in November. They said she'd be in recovery for about 6 hours. My parents took time off, practically moved into the hospital waiting room. Noah came with me, sitting in the corner, pretending to study, really just there for support. When the surgeon finally emerged after 7 hours instead of 6, we all shot up, nearly knocking over chairs. The tumor was more complicated than scans showed, wrapped around blood vessels. But they got it all. Sophia was stable. She woke up confused, nauseous, but she woke up. Over the next 2 weeks, she recovered faster than anyone expected. Walking the halls, complaining about hospital food by day 4. The pathology was benign, no radiation or chemo needed, just monitoring. My parents cried with relief, thanking every deity. The night before Sophia was discharged, she asked to talk to me alone. I thought she wanted to discuss post-surgery care, something practical. Instead, she asked if I remembered my promise. I said, of course, but you're fine now, so there's no reason to rush anything. She shook her head. This whole experience, she said, taught her life was too short, too unpredictable, to waste time waiting for perfect circumstances. She told me to marry Noah now, not in 3 years. She'd help me figure out how to tell our parents afterward. I went home and told Noah what Sophia said. We stayed up until 3 a.m. talking, wondering if we were brave enough. We played it safe for so long, actively defying my parents felt terrifying and wrong. But Sophia was right. We'd already wasted 2 years hiding. 3 more felt like an eternity when we were already so sure. Noah said if I was willing to risk my parents' reaction, he'd marry me tomorrow. I said, let's do it next month instead. Give us time to plan something small and figure out how to break the news. We decided on a courthouse ceremony with just a few close friends. Nothing fancy, just legal and real and ours. We set the date for January 14th, exactly 8 weeks away, starting quiet preparations my parents would never notice. Ava helped me shop for a simple, cream-colored dress during winter break, something I could wear again so it wouldn't be suspicious. Liam, Noah's best friend, agreed to be our witness. Sophia said she'd be there even if she had to sneak out of a follow-up appointment. No invitations, no venue. Just the marriage license, 2 witnesses, and an officiant for a 5-minute ceremony at the downtown courthouse. It felt simultaneously like the most important decision of my life, and yet, too simple to be real. Ava asked if I was scared about my parents cutting me off financially. Honestly, I was terrified. Medical school was expensive. I already had loans. Losing their help meant more debt, possibly taking time off, pushing back graduation. But Noah had already graduated with his engineering degree and had a good job at a tech company downtown. He'd been saving specifically for the possibility of us needing to support ourselves if my parents reacted badly. He showed me his bank account one night to prove he was serious. He'd calculated our budget, assuming I'd lose all parental support. It would be tight, we'd be careful, but it was doable. I cried looking at those spreadsheets. They represented 2 years of him planning for our future, when most people our age were still figuring out dinner. We told ourselves maybe my parents would surprise us, that maybe seeing me happy would matter more than their fear-based rule. But we prepared for the worst anyway. The hardest part was lying every single day leading up to the wedding. My parents would call, ask about classes, studying. I'd say everything was fine, my hidden engagement ring under my shirt. My mom would talk about Sophia's recovery, how grateful she was our family was finally healing, completely unaware I was about to detonate their peace. I felt constantly guilty, knowing what I was doing would hurt them, even if I believed it was right. Sophia kept telling me the guilt would fade once I was married and happy. That our parents' fears didn't get to control my entire life. She'd been through actual hell with Brandon and survived. My healthy relationship with Noah, she said, deserved to exist in the light, not hide in shadows. She helped me practice what I'd say when I finally told them, going through scenarios until I had something for every possible reaction. 2 weeks before the wedding, Brandon got out on parole. Sophia got a notification from the Victim Services Coordinator and called me immediately, her voice shaking. He'd served only 3 years of an 8-year sentence due to prison overcrowding and good behavior. Now he was out with an ankle monitor and a restraining order Sophia called just a piece of paper. My parents went into full protection mode again, new locks, security cameras, basically putting Sophia under house arrest. The restraining order said Brandon couldn't come within 500 feet, but they didn't trust it. They'd trusted the legal system before, and it had failed her. This obviously made my situation more complicated. My parents were extra paranoid about anything that could harm their daughters. I thought about postponing the wedding. Sophia said absolutely not. Brandon getting out was exactly why I needed to go through with it. To prove his actions didn't get to control everything in our family forever. She pointed out my relationship with Noah had nothing to do with her trauma, and conflating the two was the problem with our parents' blanket ban. Not every man was Brandon. Not every relationship ended in violence. I deserved my own story, separate from hers. She promised she'd be at the courthouse on January 14th, even if her parents had her on lockdown. She'd figure out a way. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my dorm, staring at the ceiling while Ava slept peacefully. I went through every outcome. Best case, my parents were hurt, but eventually came around. Worst case, they cut me off completely, and I didn't see them for years. The morning of January 14th arrived cold and bright. I woke at 6 a.m., though the ceremony wasn't until 11. Ava made me eat breakfast despite my stomach being in knots, helping me get ready like we were preparing for battle. I put on the cream dress, simple makeup, and the ring that had been hidden for 6 months. Ava took photos in our dorm room, pictures I'd show my future children someday. Noah texted at 9:30, already at the courthouse with Liam, the officiant ready. I told Ava it was time. We walked out into the freezing January air toward downtown. My phone rang 2 blocks away. I nearly dropped it when I saw it was my mom. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely answer. Ava grabbed my arm to steady me. My mom's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. She asked where I was, she'd called my dorm and I hadn't answered. I lied, saying I was getting coffee with Ava before my afternoon class. It was 10 a.m., and I didn't have class on Thursdays. She said she needed me home now, something had happened with Sophia. My heart stopped. I asked if Sophia was okay, if Brandon had violated the restraining order, if she was harmed. My mom said Sophia was physically fine but had left the house this morning without telling anyone. Given everything with Brandon on parole, they were terrified. Sophia wasn't answering her phone, they'd been calling for 2 hours. I felt sick. I knew exactly where Sophia was. She was already at the courthouse, waiting for me. And now her parents were losing their minds, thinking Brandon had taken her. I told my mom I'd tried calling Sophia, too, and would let her know if I reached her, then hung up before she could ask more questions. Ava looked at me. "What are we doing?" she asked. I said we were still going. Sophia was clearly committed, even if it meant our parents panicking. I texted Sophia, asking if she'd seen Mom's calls. She responded immediately, yes, but she'd silenced her phone. Today was about me, she wasn't going to miss it. She'd text Mom after the ceremony, say she'd been at a friend's, lost track of time. I felt horrible my wedding was causing this chaos, but we were 3 blocks from the courthouse, Noah was waiting, and turning back felt impossible. Ava offered to postpone, but I shook my head and kept walking. The courthouse was an old building, marble floors and high ceilings making every sound echo. Noah stood near the entrance in a dark suit I'd never seen. When he saw me, his whole face lit up in a way that made every complication worth it. Liam was there with a camera. Sophia appeared from around a corner, wearing a blue dress and the biggest smile despite the chaos she'd caused at home. She hugged me tight, whispering she was so proud of me for going through with this. The officiant, a kind-looking woman in her 50s, guided us to a small room on the 3rd floor where ceremonies happened. The space felt surreal, this tiny room with fluorescent lights, where people made lifelong commitments between lunch breaks and parking ticket payments. The officiant asked if we were ready. Noah took my hand. Suddenly, we were saying vows we'd written on notebook paper at 2 a.m. Noah promised to support my dreams, even through years of medical school stress and sleepless residency shifts. He promised to be patient with my complicated family and never to make me choose between them. I promised to trust him completely, never to let my parents' fears make me doubt what we'd built. I promised to actually communicate instead of hiding when things got hard, because we were done with secrets after today. The officiant pronounced us married. Noah kissed me while Sophia, Ava, and Liam cheered in that quiet, respectful courthouse way. Liam took photos of us signing the marriage certificate. Suddenly, it was legal and real, and there was no taking it back. I was married at 22, to someone my parents didn't even know I was dating. In a few hours, I'd have to tell them and face whatever came next. We went to a small Italian restaurant nearby for a celebration lunch. Just the 5 of us in a corner booth, eating pasta and toasting with water glasses. Sophia's phone kept buzzing. Finally, she excused herself to call Mom back, delivering her prepared lie about being at a friend's house. I could hear her voice from across the restaurant, apologetic but firm. When she came back, she said Mom was angry but relieved Sophia was safe. She'd promised to be home in an hour, which meant our wedding lunch had a time limit. We ate quickly, took more photos outside, trying to capture this strange, wonderful, terrifying day. Noah held me close, asking if I was okay. Honestly, I didn't know. I was happy and married, and also completely panicked about telling my parents. Sophia pulled me aside before we left. She said I didn't have to tell them today if I wasn't ready. I could wait a week, a month, until things calmed down with Brendan's parole. But I shook my head. Doing this in secret for one more day felt impossible now that it was real. I wanted to call Noah my husband, not my study partner. I wanted to wear my ring where people could see it. I was done hiding, even if the consequences were severe. Sophia hugged me, said she'd be there when I told them, that she'd run interference and explain why this was different from her situation with Brendan. She'd help them understand Noah had been thoroughly vetted by her over 2 years, that she'd watched our relationship carefully for any red flags and found none. I thanked her and watched her walk toward the bus stop, the sister who'd survived hell and was still fighting to protect my happiness. Ava went back to campus. Noah and I went to his apartment, sitting on the couch in stunned silence, holding hands, staring at our matching rings. We were married. Legally married. The enormity of it hit me all at once, and I started crying, not from sadness, but overwhelming everything. Noah pulled me close. He said we'd be okay, no matter how my parents reacted, that we'd figure it out together, like we'd figured out everything else. I wanted to believe him. But I also knew my parents' financial support wasn't just tuition money. It was housing over summer breaks, health insurance, a safety net. Losing that felt terrifying, especially with medical school applications coming up next year. I asked Noah if he ever regretted choosing someone with such complicated family baggage. He said never. My family's trauma didn't define our relationship, he said, and he knew what he was signing up for. I decided to tell my parents that evening, getting it over with quickly, like ripping off a bandage. I called my mom at 6 p.m., asking if I could come over to talk about something important. She immediately asked if I was pregnant or in trouble. No, I said, nothing like that, just something I needed to discuss in person. My dad would be home by 7, she said, and I should come for dinner. I met Noah at his car, and we drove to my parents' house in silence, both bracing for the worst. I told him to wait in the car while I broke the news, but he insisted on coming in with me. We were married now, he said, and that meant facing things together, not me protecting him from consequences. We pulled up to my childhood home, sitting in the driveway for 5 minutes, gathering courage. My mom opened the door before I could knock. Her face lit up seeing me, before falling when she noticed Noah behind me. She asked who he was. I said he was my study partner from school, who'd driven me because my car was having issues. Another lie, but my last one. In 10 minutes, everything would be true. We went inside. My dad was setting the table. He looked up, did the same double take seeing Noah. My parents had literally never met him, despite 2 years of relationship, because our cover story only worked if they never saw us together. Sophia was already there, sitting at the counter, and she gave me an encouraging nod. My mom asked if Noah wanted to stay for dinner. I said, actually, yes, he should stay, because I need to tell you something, and he's involved. We all sat at the dining room table with the lasagna my mom had made. The normalcy of the scene felt bizarre given what I was about to say. My dad asked how school was going. I said fine, then took a deep breath. I told them I needed to confess something I'd been hiding. My mom's face immediately tensed. She glanced at Sophia, like she thought this was about Brandon somehow. I said it wasn't about Sophia or Brandon, or anything dangerous, but they weren't going to be happy. I pulled the chain out from under my shirt and showed them the ring I'd been hiding for 6 months. Both my parents stared, without comprehension. I said Noah and I had been dating for 2.5 years, that we met before they implemented the no-dating rule, and had continued seeing each other in secret because I couldn't give up either him or their support for medical school. The silence that followed was suffocating. My dad asked if I was joking. No, I said, completely serious. My mom looked at Noah like he was a stranger who'd broken into her house, which, in her mind, I guess he kind of was. She asked how I could be so selfish and reckless after everything they'd been through with Sophia. My face got hot with shame and anger. I said I understood their fear, but Noah wasn't Brandon. Lumping all men together because of one terrible person was unfair and unhealthy. Sophia spoke up. She said she'd known about the relationship for 2 years, had been watching carefully for any warning signs. Noah had treated me with nothing but respect and kindness. My dad stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. He said I had betrayed their trust, broken the one rule they'd established to keep me safe, and there would be consequences. I said I knew about the consequences, but I needed them to understand something first. I pulled up my phone and showed them photos from the past 2 years, Noah and me studying, him helping me move, us volunteering at the free clinic. Sophia had secretly taken some of them, documenting a relationship my parents never knew existed. I showed them texts from Noah, checking on me during midterms, bringing me food when I was too stressed to eat, staying up late to help me study for the MCT. I showed them the spreadsheet he'd made, calculating how we'd survive if they cut me off financially. My mom was crying now. I couldn't tell if it was from anger or something else. Then I said the thing that would change everything. I told them Noah and I got married this morning at the courthouse. That Sophia had been there as our witness. I understood if they never wanted to speak to me again, but I wasn't going to apologize for choosing happiness. The explosion I expected didn't come immediately. Instead, my dad sat back down heavily, putting his head in his hands. My mom stared at the table, not saying anything for at least 3 full minutes. Sophia reached across and squeezed my hand under the table. Finally, my dad looked up and asked Noah directly if he understood what he'd signed up for, marrying into a family this broken and complicated. Noah met his eyes. Yes, he understood completely. He'd watched me support Sophia through her recovery and deal with the trauma. He respected how much I loved my family despite the difficult circumstances. He didn't want to take me away from them, he said. He wanted to be part of helping us all heal. My mom asked why we couldn't have waited 3 more years. I said because 3 years was arbitrary and based on fear, not an actual assessment of Noah's character. Sophia told them the story of her brain tumor and the promise she'd made me make about not wasting life waiting for perfect circumstances that might never come. She said watching Brandon nearly dismantle her had taught her that life was too short and unpredictable to postpone happiness. And she'd encouraged me to marry Noah now instead of hiding for 3 more years. My mom started crying harder. I realized she wasn't angry anymore, just overwhelmed, scared, and grieving the loss of control over a situation she tried to prevent. My dad asked what we expected from them now, if we thought they'd just accept this and keep paying for medical school like nothing had changed. I said, honestly, I don't know what to expect, but I hope you can at least try to get to know Noah before deciding he's dangerous just because he exists. We sat there for another hour, talking through everything. Slowly, the conversation shifted from accusations to questions. My parents asked Noah about his job, his family, his plans. They asked how he'd managed to hide a relationship for 2.5 years. I explained the study partner cover and Ava's constant alibis. They asked if Noah had ever pressured me or shown signs of controlling behavior. Both Sophia and I said absolutely not, that if anything, I'd been the one pushing to move faster while Noah wanted to wait and do things right. My mom asked to see the wedding photos. Liam had already sent them to my phone. She looked at pictures of me in my cream dress, signing the certificate, and fresh tears started falling. She said I looked happy, which was apparently both wonderful and heartbreaking for her. By the time we left that night, nothing was resolved, but at least we were still speaking. My dad said he wasn't ready to give his blessing, but he wouldn't cut me off completely. We'd figure out the financial stuff over time. My mom hugged me goodbye, whispering. She was trying to understand. I whispered back that I knew this was hard, and I was sorry for the secrecy. Noah shook both their hands, promising to take care of me, which felt weirdly traditional given the circumstances. We drove back to his apartment in silence, both emotionally exhausted. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, I felt this strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that the secret was finally out. Guilt that telling the truth had hurt my parents so deeply. The next few months were complicated and messy. My parents agreed to meet with Noah and me once a week for dinner, getting to know him slowly, learning to trust him. Sophia became our biggest advocate, constantly pointing out the differences between Noah's respectful behavior and Brandon's controlling manipulation. My mom started therapy to process her trauma. She admitted one night that she'd been trying to prevent the wrong thing. She couldn't prevent me from getting hurt, only from living. My dad took longer to come around, but gradually I'd catch him laughing at Noah's jokes or asking his advice about tech problems. 6 months after the courthouse ceremony, we had a small reception in my parents' backyard with extended family who hadn't even known I was dating anyone. My mom cried through the whole thing, but this time they were happy tears. Medical school applications happened that fall, and Noah sat with me through every essay and interview prep session. I got accepted to 3 programs, and we chose the one closest to both our families. My parents helped with tuition, like they'd promised. My dad admitted he was impressed with how seriously Noah took his commitment to supporting my career. Sophia started dating again for the first time since Brandon, someone kind and patient who understood her trauma and never pushed her boundaries. She said watching my relationship with Noah had given her hope that healthy love existed, that not everyone would harm her the way Brandon had. Brendan violated his parole 8 months after getting out and was incarcerated for another 5 years, which gave all of us some breathing room. Looking back now, I don't regret getting married at 22 despite my parents' rule. Was it harder than waiting would have been? Absolutely. Did it cause pain and conflict that might have been avoided? Definitely. But it also forced necessary conversations about fear, control, and healing that our family needed to have anyway. My parents' blanket ban hadn't actually kept me safe. It had just taught me to hide and lie, which is arguably more dangerous than being open about relationships where warning signs could be spotted early. Sophia says my rebellion gave her permission to start living again, instead of letting Brandon's mistreatment define her forever. She's planning her own wedding now to her kind, patient boyfriend, and my parents are genuinely happy for her instead of terrified. The week of our first anniversary, Noah surprised me with a proper honeymoon since we'd skipped it the first time. We went to a small beach town where we could finally be publicly married without worrying about who might see us. We walked on the beach, wearing our rings in full view, and the freedom of it felt incredible. After years of hiding, my parents sent us a card congratulating us on 1 year of marriage, which felt like final acceptance after all the struggle. My mom had written inside that she was proud of me for fighting for my happiness, even when it scared her, and that she was grateful I'd found someone who treated me with the respect I deserved. My dad added that Noah had proven himself to be exactly the kind of partner they'd hoped I'd find someday, just sooner than they'd expected. Telling this story now feels surreal. I remember so clearly how terrified I was the morning of the wedding, how convinced I was my parents would never forgive me. The reality ended up being more complicated than I'd imagined, but also more hopeful. They didn't forgive me immediately, but they didn't abandon me either. They struggled, asked questions, and slowly learned to trust again. Sophia's recovery played a huge role, because watching her heal while Brandon was incarcerated proved that trauma doesn't have to define you forever. My parents had been so focused on preventing future pain that they had forgotten people also need permission to pursue joy. Getting married at 22 wasn't reckless or selfish like my dad first claimed. It was just choosing to start my life instead of waiting for someone else's timeline to allow it. Do you think we handled it the best way we could?